afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Propagandacast Lehr with me, your host, Imperial Dane. We're off here to have a look at the M8A1 howitzer motor carrier, also known as the M8 Scott. A small self-propelled artillery piece, equipped with a 75mm howitzer, and, well, reasonably useful. It comes in at a whopping 260 manpower and 75 fuel. It's available from the battalion command post, and it has access to a slight variety of abilities, including a mobile 75mm barrage, and can actually see a 5 it moves, still moves. It also gets a smoke barrage with the same. It can also, at Veterans 1, pop smoke on its own, in that way increasing its survivability. So in that regard, you know, possesses some nice ability. There's a self-propelled artillery piece, but also some extra ability, sort of makes it a bit more useful in the longer run. Veterans abilities, well, sort of mostly the same things for any artillery piece in that regard, so nothing vastly surprising there. What it does possess, though, is a pretty sort of, you know, ability to fire off any terrain, which of course allows you to sort of place it behind cover and such, you know, fire, hide and such. But I mean, otherwise, I mean, it's basically like a small little tank in some regards, at least when it comes to dealing with infantry versus infantry. I mean, you could deal with infantry reasonably well. I mean, you can fight it from a distance, but at the same time, if the infantry doesn't have anything you have to worry about and see in form of a Panzerfaust, you can actually drive reasonably close and then shoot directly at him, doing quite a bit of damage. And the Scott is punishing the effective versus infantry as long as it's the proper range. I mean, it can wipe out squads with a good hit. It can decimate your German opponents, cause quite a bit of harm, and certainly slow down any assault or soften up any opponent for an attack. So in general, I mean, the Scott is a pretty solid vehicle. In particular, once it gains Victory 2, it becomes that much more nasty. Also, things to keep an eye about the barrels, it actually has a longer range than its regular fire. So that's also a little good thing there to keep in mind about the Scott. But generally, you know, you want to use the Scott as much as possible. I mean, it's really one of the Americans' excellent vehicles. Something quite solid when it comes to dealing with infantry. You can even sort of reasonably well deal with light vehicles, and even damaged armour has to feel a Scott. I've certainly seen a few Panzer IVs with a sliver of health low being knocked out by a Scott from a good angle. And you very much have to be careful about bunching up your units in front of the Scott, as it will punish you for it. And, I mean, for example, there you go. Units wiped out. It can survive about, well, 2 hits, 2 to 3 hits, depending on if their critical happens. So, I mean, it's not exactly durable. That's also one of the major weaknesses. And you have to be careful about sort of properly shielding it, because your opponent will very quickly try to rush it, as you see here, and knock it out, because your opponent will not want you to have a Scott for any longer period of time. So that is important to keep in mind. I mean, you have to be careful with it, you have to guard it, you have to secure it. Because in particular, once it gains that Victory 2, I mean, again, it just becomes that much more mean. More accuracy and a high rate of fire really just means it can tear apart an opponent's infantry, it can tear apart an opponent's defences. So really, an M8 Scott, it can be an absolute nightmare for any German player as long as it is well handled. And it's not uncommon to see a pair of them working together, devastating German infantry and lighter vehicles. So I mean, for a surprisingly low price, you're getting a very potent vehicle. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I mean, it won't help versus heavier armour, of course. Panthers, King Tigers and the Knights, of course, will, well, blow it aside like a leaf in the wind. But beyond that, it has considerable punch, considerable potency, and again, it can be used for a bit of this and that as well. But it really is a massive infantry threat, unlike few other things in the game. So, I mean, that is very important to keep in mind with it. But again, you know, I mean, it will have trouble with heavy armor, even medium armor, to some extent. It's only sort of in. It has a slight chance of penetrating and doing some damage, with no sort of guaranteed chance of doing it. But still, an absolute nightmare. And you generally want to get rid of it as soon as it happens if you're the Axis player. Though, of course, you can then, of course, if the opponent expect it, and sort of try to set it up. So, for example, if your opponent tries to rush it or even flank it, you will run into some problems. But again, it doesn't take a lot of damage. It's 2 Panzer 4 hits, for example, and it will go down. So very much sort of vital to keep in mind. And of course, don't be afraid to use stability to, you know, clear up a way of some lay down a smoke screen in preparation for an advance. And again, I mean, you can even use terrain to sort of cover it up, allowing it to get close to the opponent, but still fire without getting directly shot back at. So really potent vehicle, and for a surprisingly low price. I mean, it's not uncommon to see some players actually go for 3 of them and just, well, tear apart the opponent while maybe having a Jackson or something else to sort of deal with any other armor that might actually appear. And certainly if you are playing against an opponent with a Scott, you have to be very careful with the infantry, because your opponent will most certainly try to sort of knock them out and get a few good kills there. I mean, cover, for example, like this, will help. As it is, you know, direct shell in that regard, it can, you know, absorb some of it, but it's not going to last forever. So that is also vital to keep in mind. And again, here we see, you know, opponent wants to get that Scott, rushes in a Puma to try and get it. But then other armor bits arrive. We've got the Scott there firing back, not quite hitting. Popping smoke though. Again, as soon as it gets into one you really want to do is continue smoke again to try and stop, because your opponent will really try to want to kill it. So that is very vital to keep in mind. I mean, this Scott is not very survivable. Its strength largely lies in slightly mobility. Continuing smoke sort of for survivability, but otherwise, you know, just get killing. Just get killing. Be wary of anti-tank guns. A well-placed anti-tank gun can quickly clear it up. Otherwise, very strong little weapon, and definitely something to be feared. It is definitely one of the best lighter tanks in the game, or in this case lighter, well, assault guns I suppose some might call it. So again, keep it in mind. Keep it in mind. And you will, using it, not be sad about it at all. In fact, you'll quite like it. And facing against it, you will certainly do your best in maybe, you know, trying to contain the damage and knocking it out as quickly as humanly possible. So that is very good to keep in mind. Very good to keep in mind. And I think that sort of largely overall covers it here on the Scott department there. Its potency, its lethality, and its sheer ability to just make things miserable for any German player. There we go again. Took out quite a bit of health and also 2 squad members in the process. So I mean, a well-handled Scott is very much a pain in the ass for the opponent to deal with. So, you know, do not hesitate to use the demand control. Of course, I mean, again, be sure you have something to cover, because again, it will very quickly become a priority target for your opponent. And I think that rather covers it here for the M8A1, the M8 Scott, its powers, its strengths, its weaknesses, how to get the most out of it. And again, I mean, you sort of want to sort of judge what kind of opponent you're fighting, the terrain and all that, and then you want to sort of try and get as close as possible so there's less scatter, so there's a more better chance, you know, of getting on a good kill on the target. But otherwise, you know, use its mobility to sort of get out of a situation quickly in any kind of bad situation. This gets Veterans 1. Do not hesitate to use concealing smoke, since that will be one of the primary keys to keeping it alive, because as the game progresses, your opponent will want to kill it, because it will rake up kills, it will cause harm, it will wipe out weapon teams, anti-tank guns and the likes. It is a very potent little piece. Do not underestimate it. So thank you all for watching. I hope you've learned, I hope you've gained a greater understanding of the M8A1. Some ideas how to use it, how not to use it, and of course, how to get the most out of it. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers, and thank you all for watching. See you another time. Bye.